clap in front of your face. Okay, great.
Very safe.
Super safe.
The clap is safe.
All right, guys, we're live, so y'all can go ahead and get this started.
All right. Hey, welcome everybody to The Fighter Stance. The Fighter Stance is the companion podcast to About Violence. That's our Sheepdog Response and Tim Kennedy's podcast. And so we get together on The Fighter Stance. It's just us, the guys in the gym, the guys who work around here in Sheepdog Response. And we get together and we talk about what goes on. We pick different themes for the month and, the things that we want to talk about that are important to us. And we're kind of the guys that are down here rowing, keeping the ship going. And so just kind of course, right on time. Sorry.
Everyone make sure to silence the phone.
Yep.
Check.
You can see Matt looking at his phone right now.
Yeah, threw it away. All right, I'll start again. All right, everybody. Hey, welcome to The Fighter Stance. Fighter Stance is the companion podcast to About Violence. That's Tim Kennedy's and Sheepdog Response's podcast. Here on Fighter Stance, it's just us, just the fighters, the guys who work here at Sheepdog Response, the guys who kind of row and keep the ship moving, and kind of get together and share our opinions, talk about subjects around the horn, what happens here in our training facility, what's on our minds, and kind of get the chance to talk about what we want to talk about. And we like to keep it light, keep it fun. And I'm joined here today by a couple of my friends. By the way, my name is Matt Smith. I'm the director here at Sheepdog Response. I'm a veteran of the United States military. I was in for 25 years. I was a Special Forces Green Beret, and now I work here full time. I'm retired. I work here full time. I love my job because I get all the free coffee, jiu-jitsu, and ammo I can handle, and that's as good as it gets. To my right here is Jaco Khalili. Jaco, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, how's it going, guys? My name is Jaco Khalili, third degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm also one of the members of the Guild of the Army Combatives Black Belt System. 21-year Army veteran. I was an infantryman, and I spent a lot of my time in the Army as a combatives instructor. I'm also known as the Godfather of Army Combatives. And when I'm not doing high-speed director of training stuff for Sheepdog Response, I'm the head of security for Five Finger Death Punch.
And then across from me, Zach Mayo. Zach?
So my resume is not as impressive as these two gentlemen, but I am a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I am a Navy veteran. I've worked for Sheepdog Response for almost 4 years now, and I'm here every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Zach works in a really high stress environment because he has to deal with all the complaints from all the different people that call in or helping him with all their situations. And sometimes I feel at any moment he's going to crack. So when we picked a subject, we tried to pick a subject for the month, a theme for the month, and we got to talking and we started talking about combatives. We at Sheepdog Response, we teach combatives to our clientele, meaning it's an amalgam of martial arts that are good for self-defense. And when you talk about combatives, you can't have the conversation about combatives without talking about the father of combatives, Matt Larsen. And then we had the idea to get in touch with Matt Larsen and see if he would join us for the podcast. And lucky us, he did. And so on the line with us now, getting piped in with us is the one and only, the legendary Matt Larsen. So Matt, hi, thanks for joining us. Go ahead and take a second and introduce yourself to the audience.
All right. Well, first, good to see you guys, Matt, Jaco, Zach. Nice to meet you. So my name is Matt Larsen. Was 4 years a Marine infantryman in the 5th Marines. I was 12 years in the 75th Ranger Regiment in the various battalions, and then grew out of the hand-to-hand combat program from the 75th Ranger Regiment, and eventually became the Army Doctrine and the Army Combatives School, which is where Jaco and I work together. And then I did that for many years and then took my show on the road, trained in other armies around the world. And now I'm the director of combatives and teach combat psychology at West Point.
Yeah. So part of the reason, or even part of the impetus for us getting together and even talking about this is at the end of last year, a video came out on YouTube, and it's a video of you with West Point cadets on the mats at West Point, and you talking to them about warrior culture. And it was very inspirational. And since then, we've been dreaming of doing this. So now the dream is becoming a reality. But Matt is the lead instructor, of course, at the United States Military Academy at West Point, where all of the finest military leaders are forged. And he gets the opportunity to help mold, future military leaders there. So aside from his history within the military and then building the military combatives program, he continues to make it a reality within the military and develop that fighting culture. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, especially as a retiree. It's weird because when you're in the Army, you're in it. And then when you get out, you immediately become consumed with how things are degrading in the Army. And my dad used to say the same thing as a former military guy. He'd be like, "Oh, it's all going to shit.
It's soft now."
Yeah, so it's terrible. But like,
Back in my
I was
day.
never as concerned as the day that I retired. But I am. I mean, I want the warrior culture to live on. I love what it did for me. I love what it did for the people that I surround myself with. So I really appreciate you doing that and perpetuating it and keeping it alive. There's nobody better to do it, in my opinion. Quick off the top of my head, I just want to ask, just for the greater listening audience, can you define what combatives is? What is combatives as you imagined it?
Well, the short answer is that it's America's martial art. And I think that what has happened is that, over the course of the last 20 plus years of war, we've taken all the input from all the traditional things we did, which were boxing, wrestling, et cetera. And then what we all knew from the martial arts of that area, of that era, and now in the modern world of martial arts, we have Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, mixed martial arts, all those lessons coming into the civilian world, and those have been sort of filtered through the lens of all the people who've been fighting the war for all these last 20 years, and what has emerged has been combatives. So when you say somebody is a combatives guy, what do you mean? Like we were talking earlier about how Jaco's a black belt. Well, what does it mean to be a black belt, in combatives? Well, a black belt in combatives is the guy you want next to you when you're in battle. When you go through that door, that's the guy, and he has that skill set. And I'll extrapolate a little bit out, but like you can imagine what that skill set is. You want somebody who can fight, sure. You want somebody who can shoot. You want somebody who can put a tourniquet on you if you get shot. You want somebody strong that can pull you off that objective if you need to be. You want somebody who can drive. You want somebody, there's a whole list of skills that a modern warrior needs to have, and that everybody really knows what they are. Everybody who's involved in intense combat knows what those skills are. And a combatives expert is an expert in those things. And so that's what I would say, like a short answer, like I said, combatives is America's martial art. And it is that skill set. And it is also like, it's our way of spreading that warrior culture that we were part of in the military. How do we spread that? With all the things that are happening in our country now in our culture right now, we're kind of the antidote to that, because we're the ones saying, oh, you need to do this. You need to get in the weight room and get strong. You need to get on the mat, learn how to roll. You need to put those gloves on, bang a little bit. You need to get on the range and shoot. We're the ones saying that stuff because we need that person next to us to have those skills.
Yeah,
I couldn't way more to it than that. But.
Yeah, Jaco, when you taught at combatives or at a combatives gym, what was it like being out there? What was it like, teaching in a combatives gym versus teaching in a regular martial arts gym or like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gym?
I think that the key takeaway, the differences between like Jiu-Jitsu and combatives or MMA and combatives is the mission. Our mentality for training combatives is about bringing, surviving in the battlefield, making sure our friends next to us are coming home, and I think that's our biggest tool. When you talk about what's the worst that could happen to an MMA fighter, or what's the worst that could happen to a jiu-jitsu guy, they get submitted or they get knocked out in front of their friends. Mm-hmm. The worst thing that could happen to a soldier or a Marine is they get burned alive in a Humvee. So why are MMA fighters or pro boxers or jiu-jitsu guys training harder than military people are? And I think that was the best thing, was I was able to use that kind of mentality to train our soldiers, and knowing that they're going to take that training back to their units and hopefully make them successful and be able to bring themselves and their buddies back from war.
Yeah. So it's the art or a mixture of martial arts, true MMA, but within all but within that, or overarching over all that, is that ethos that you're talking about, or that culture, that warrior culture that you're talking about, is like having that be the end state, as opposed to, just achieving some rank or just being successful in a tournament, is knowing that you're a well-rounded, warrior state type of individual. And I think that's awesome. I think that's what attracted me to it in the beginning, when I got the opportunity to do it with you. I trained with Matt in Virginia. It was some of the best time of my life. I loved it. And then when you meet other people that got to be involved in that culture, they're all have been impacted by it, because it's just epic. It's epic to be involved with it. And then when you see it for what it is, that American martial art, that's specifically why we wanted to talk about it, because I want to get to the point, and I got it in my notes here, to the day when I can sit down and on a Word document and type combatives in, and it doesn't come back as misspelled. I want it to be a word in our vernacular that people understand it as its own thing. I think Matt does too. It's just that, the other ones, they're a little more out front. The other martial arts are a little more out front. We see them more because they're designed for tournament, whereas combatives is designed for defense. We here at Sheepdog, we teach real self-defense to people, and there's many times, even in marksmanship and on the mats, where I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna. Don't try that on the street. Jaco says it all the time. Don't try that on the street. Or there are guys who are skilled, like Zach's very skilled at submissions and all these things, but even he knows, like, I would never try this on the street, because that's for the mats, not for the street. And we here, when we're teaching, when he's teaching on the at one of our courses, we're very careful to make sure that they understand, hey, this is combatives and anything goes. Like, you just because you got in the mount doesn't mean somebody couldn't hit you in the back of the head with a bar stool, and you got to be prepared for that. So a lot of it is about situational awareness and understanding the mentality and your surroundings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand about martial arts, specifically the civilian martial arts, is two things. The martial arts are evolutionary, meaning they change over time, and they respond to the pressures around them. So what that means is, in a mostly peaceful society like America, martial arts don't necessarily have to be real. The largest martial art in America is still Taekwondo, and the reason it is because there's a niche for parents to send their children to Taekwondo after school and get a little discipline, learn some physical skills, etc. It's got nothing to do with fighting whatsoever, but that doesn't matter, because it's perpetuated by that niche and it thrives in that niche, right? And so civilians, if they go into martial arts, they might think that they go into them because they want to fight, or they want to learn to fight, but that's not generally why they stay, right? They stay because there's other things about it they like. Maybe they're doing a traditional Japanese martial art, and what they like is the connection to the culture, or they're doing, submission wrestling, and they like the athletic portion of it, and they like the whole, physical chess portion. And there's lots of wonderful things about it that don't necessarily have to deal with reality, right? And even our martial arts, if you step back and think about how the things we do got to be the way they are, imagine that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu evolved if you look back at the Gracie's history and whatnot, it evolved for one-on-one challenge matches. So in a one-on-one challenge match, the most outstanding feature is there's a tactical vacuum, right? We have a gentleman's agreement not to bite each other's nose off. Nobody's got a gun or a knife. Nobody's buddies jumping in. There's no tactical situation. And if we just fight it out with no time limit until somebody wins, well, that's why it favored ground grappling. That's why that came to the fore, right? Okay, so that was up until that first or second, third UFC. Then the UFC, like, it took on its own life, right? Now it was about entertaining the crowd, right? Why do UFC fighters wear 4-ounce gloves? Well, because it's more exciting if they hit each other. And if they hit each other without gloves on, they break their hands. So we have gloves to make striking a bigger part of it and whatnot, right? So see, nobody's really driving the ship. They're just drifting, and it's changing over time, right? So with combatives, we can't really suffer that, because in combatives, okay, first off, the war zone drove it to be what it is. And second off, it must remain real, because if it doesn't remain real, lives are on the line. You know what I mean? So that's a whole different tamale than, I like to do this, this is my entertainment for myself. I'm doing this. Yeah, I want to be able to be bad as I could be, but I want you to be as bad as you could be. And it needs to be real, because we're going to war together.
Yeah, that speaks to what Jaco was saying about like it's all about the end state of making sure that there's some element of survivability and a chance of victory, man. You got to fight to win, and it's that fight to win mentality beyond all costs that kind of gets factored in, where that doesn't necessarily live, although it does to some degree, but like you said, they have to create a set of parameters for most of the martial arts to be palatable or digestible for the civilian populace.
That's the thing about combatives too, is like just like every other martial art, like Matt was saying, people are doing combatives because they want to get in shape or they like the mental challenge of that. But combatives it was so hard and so realistic that we would get those people would still try to quit. They'll come to like the first week of combatives and we'd box them. They get punched in the face a couple times, and their want for physical fitness or their want for human chess was overridden by the fact that they were getting their ass kicked.
Yeah.
And I would have to talk those people back into the course. Like, listen, you're a soldier, bro. Whether you want to get in shape or not, you have to be good at this stuff. Like, you have to push yourself through this, not only for yourself, but when you go back to your unit, you're going to expect 100% from your guys. Yeah. You can't quit this class, go back to your unit, and still expect them to perform at 100% when you're not willing to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's a hard sell, because I've even heard Matt talk about this before, about the differences between running a martial arts gym and running a combatives program, and that like a martial arts gym has to be run in a way that perpetuates people returning.
It's a business.
It's a business.
Yeah, you have to make money.
We have to sell. Right. We have to sell this. That's a big thing about martial arts in the U.S. Like you're talking before, how it's kind of gotten, we didn't say this, but watered down. You have to be able to sell it to people. You have to have people keep coming back in the door. You can't make it as real as combatives, where you have to be real within combatives. Martial arts have suffered that over the ages, I think.
Yeah, but there's something to be said, like you said, about like whether other martial arts like Taekwondo or pick the martial art where it does instill discipline. There is some, there are endearing qualities that come from being invested in those. But yeah, you're right. Like the military really can't suffer that much because they have to be able to create warriors that win. So I'm going to dive in just a little bit. If you could give us a little backstory on, I'll tell you, one of my fondest memories was like first time hearing the story from you when you were said, hey, when I first showed up to Ranger Battalion, they had a ninjutsu instructor there teaching ninjutsu, and you kind of said, hey guys, what is going on here? So can you give us a little bit of the history about how you came up with, or what was the impetus that drove having to change, like kind of flip the paradigm with combatives, vice all these other kind of martial arts that were kind of getting loosely taught.
Who flung poo?
Yeah.
Well, so the background to the story is that I've been a martial arts since I was in the Marines. My first duty station was Tokyo, right? So I started training karate and judo in Tokyo, and the whole time I was in the Marines, and my first 4 years in the Rangers, I was trying to teach that sort of stuff and not having any success, right? I mean, and the reason, which will become more clear as I tell the story, the reason is that the training methodologies and pedagogies of those arts, they don't translate into the military culture. It's like there's no time to put in the time to become a good boxer in an infantry platoon, right? So it doesn't necessarily work to try to do that. So at the time, I before anything else got really into competitive marksmanship, right? So this is, like I said, the backstory nobody knows. So whenever we got back from the Panama invasion, the Rangers realized, because we were just basically an infantry battalion, just like a high-speed infantry battalion at the time, we realized that we needed to do better at urban combat, close quarters battle, and whatnot, right? So we sent guys around to other places. I went up to, it was back before Range 37 was a thing. It was like Mott Lake at the time. So I went up there to a course and basically learned modern shooting up at SWIC. And so all the things that came from that, they're actually from the civilian sport of action pistol shooting, right? So I learned that sport. And when I came back from that training course up there that I went to, which was Sephardic, I came back and got to First Bat and started a club where we all started like shooting every Sunday and having a tournament. And we called it the Sunday Night Slaughter, right? Every Sunday after church, we'd all get together and practice killing people, right? It was fun.
Beautiful.
As hell. So
we should do
but
that.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I'm going to write that
down. Right.
You have free ammo. Why not?
That's right.
Well,
and so every week we would run,
Is it
every
too
week
late
we
to change the
set
name
up
of the podcast?
That's right. So every week we get together. We just run like 5 or 6 strings of fire, score them all up, see who won. It was a lot of fun. It drove the training, and it transitioned what was going on marksmanship wise within the Ranger Battalion. Like it changed it within 6 months. The level of marksmanship in that battalion went through the roof just because this became a thing and everybody wanted to get good at it and et cetera. And to this day, some of the bigger names in the shooting world can be linked back to that club, the Sunday Night Slaughter, that we started at that time, right? So that as the backdrop, when I got up to Second Ranger Battalion, that was when General McChrystal came in and he said, "Hey, I want you guys to do combatives." So when he said that, the first guys that came to the fore were those ninjas you were talking about, right? So I had trained a little bit of ninjutsu. Like I said, I did all the traditional martial arts for many years before I stepped along. But I was training at a really great club at the time called the Tacoma Judo Club. It's really, still to this day, a fabulous place to train. And I was trying to learn to ground grapple because there's always like grab ass wrestling going on in the infantry unit. So I was trying to get better at it, right? I'm from Texas. I didn't really learn how to wrestle as a kid. So that was my way of getting at it, right? So right at that time is when the UFCs came along, and some of y'all probably know Norm Hooten. It was him and another guy came down to visit. They were from that unit originally, and they came down. And I had been training, emulating hoist with my judo coach and whatnot. And then Norm came down, and then we sort of like showed everybody, hey, this stuff works, right? So then, with that as the backdrop, I trained up my squad. And when my squad, because I was a squad leader at the time, I was a staff sergeant. I trained up my squad. They started whipping all the guys in the platoon. So then trained up the platoon because everybody was hungry for it, right? Then we started whipping all the guys in the company. So we trained up the company. And that's how we slowly like took over just by whipping everybody's ass. Pretty soon that was what we were doing in 2nd Ranger Battalion, right? Everybody became grappling guys.
Yeah.
Along that story, eventually we got Hoyce and his brother Horian to come up and help train us some. And I was taking my vacations down then at the time to go train with those guys. And then this is how it spread throughout the Army. So we went down to JRTC sometimes. So for your listeners who don't know, that's the Joint Readiness Training Center. It's like a big laser tag game the Army plays down in Louisiana.
Yeah, it's in the land that time forgot, man. You go to Fort Polk, Louisiana, it's like stepping back 400 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, 800 guys in the woods playing laser tag, right?
Yeah.
All Modern Army equipment was. So anyway, so we're down there doing that, and the 1st and 2nd Ranger Battalions were down there together. And, Rangers being Rangers, pretty soon there were challenge matches going on.
I was about to say,
right?
that's dangerous. That's dangerous just having 2 Ranger Battalions in the woods together with nothing to do.
That's right. So I remember I was taking a nap and my guys woke me up when the matches started, right? And so I came out and there was like 65 matches that day or something like that. And 2nd Ranger Battalion just won almost all of them. We probably won like 62 of the 65 matches or something crazy like that. So we used to call it the Great First Battalion Massacre, right? So we just wiped those guys out. And then when we did it, that was what happened. Then it spread. Like the whole regiment was like, what the hell are the guys from 275 doing? And then we all started training, right?
Yep.
So it wasn't long after that, they brought me down to be, so officially I was the headquarters platoon sergeant in 275. That was my actual job because my real job was being Kung Fu boy, right? And so then I went to be the RASP NCOIC, which is the Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. So I was the NCOIC of that, but really I was Kung Fu boy, right? And so we trained up the entire Ranger Regiment on the things we had been doing. The way it spread to the Army was Rangers have to leave the regiment after a while, and especially the officers. They can't stay very long. So they come in, like if you're going to command a Ranger company, you must first command a regular infantry company. And if you're going to command a Ranger battalion, you must first command a regular infantry battalion.
Yep.
So all those guys have to leave all the time. So when that crew of leaders left, the ones we trained up, General McChrystal made all the battalion commanders at the time spend a week training with me. So that was like Mick Bednarik, General Allen, General Mike Farrader, like these guys who went on to be all 3- and 4-star guys. So as they left, they took over other regiments, and they submitted for the Army to change the doctrine. So I switched over to the Ranger Training Brigade, which for the listeners, that's where Ranger School is. It's separate from the Ranger Regiment. So I went over to there, and it took me like 10 minutes to become Kung Fu Boy over there. So then when they submitted all this stuff to me to say, hey, we should update a doctrine to do what we're doing in the Ranger Regiment, it came like with pictures of me, right? I was like, this stuff is brilliant, right? Like where do we get these supermodels to be these pictures of, right? So that's how we got to rewrite the manual. And then from there, General Farrader was in charge of like infantry officer basic course, captain career course, those things. So he wanted to teach all those guys. So he hired me and my partner at the time, Troy Thomas, to go over and build up a course to train up the cadre of those schools. That's what eventually became the Army Combative School. So that's what eventually was level 1, level 2. As it spread throughout the Army, like kind of wildfire, where more and more courses were needed because we needed train trainers and have people who could manage larger programs. So that's kind of the story. And then right around that time was when the war was kicking off, So it kind of started mostly as like a jiu-jitsu program, but it was clear to us, even like from the very beginning, that jiu-jitsu wasn't quite what we were trying to do, because in life, we're going to have guns and knives and buddies and stuff, and there's not going to be any rules. So we were already at the beginning have to like modify what we were up to make it fit what we're doing. So then by the time we started the school, it started being about, here's how you train a battalion, here's how you put it into close quarters battle, here's how you all the lessons that you have to learn to take that and turn it into what it really needs to be. And when feedback started coming back from the war zone, then the lessons really were coming off, like, hey man, this is what goes down in fights, But we could say now, like when we say, hey, this is what happens, like it's not supposition. We know this is what happens in fights on the battlefield. And so that's kind of dictated the growth. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. And I agree wholeheartedly about, like once you learn ground truth, that drives everything. I mean, we know that in the military, but once they come back from the battlefield and say, hey, this is what really kept us alive, and then you develop from that. So that was an awesome history. I love learning about it. I came to, I subscribed to jiu-jitsu. I love jiu-jitsu. I train in jiu-jitsu and grappling, but I started in combative. So I came to jiu-jitsu late, and I remember because there are many elements of judo, and there are takedowns and things that are in combatives, because that's important. You should be on your feet when you meet your opponent, and there's often you can get them off their feet and you can win that way. And if you can finish the fight early, then that's great. So I started in the combatives community, and I talked to Jaco and Zach about this quite a bit. And the first time I ever went to a jiu-jitsu gym, they were like, all right, now we're going to go roll. And I walked over, and the guy across from me got down on his knees. I was like, what are you doing, man? Like, stand up, let's do this thing. And they were like, no, that's not how we do it here. Like usually not until you get to a tournament level, you know what I mean, do they start working takedowns. It's all from the knees. And again, that's to make sure that people keep coming back. Like, how long were you in jiu-jitsu before you started doing stand-up?
Yeah, actually didn't start doing it until I went to Japan. I was deployed to Japan, and I was like a blue belt, just got my blue belt maybe a year in.
Yeah.
And every single roll, they start on their feet in Japan. That's where I started standing up all the time. In America, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You rarely find a gym in America where you're standing up and you start sparring.
Yeah, even now, I think until they get to like until they're going to go compete, which is crazy because all the tournaments you start standing up, but for some reason there's not a lot of we do it quite a bit here, and there are some gyms that do it, but yeah, it's weird that,
you got to be like in a competition class or something.
I would add that like in combatives, one of the forcing mechanisms of fighting, especially on the battlefield, but real fights, what is close quarters?
Yeah.
As in you're in a tight spaces, So it's not just that you start on your feet. You start like in a small area,
right,
with walls and furniture, and shit like that. So
on your feet in a confined space with everybody's crap in there, whoever's.
That's right. Like the first thing the fight generally starts with somebody shoving somebody else up against the wall or over the couch or something like that, and that's where things begin. That's why I should pitch to all you guys that everybody should probably know that Jaco is one of like experts in the world about like how to fight against the cage wall.
Oh, I've seen
it. He developed that not from fighting against the cage wall, but from fighting against the wall of a small room when you got your body armor and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like the lessons translate really well. So instead of it being like from MMA into combatives, so it's actually the opposite direction. We had trained combatives, and then that trained into all of a sudden. Jaco used to go out and coach like people fighting at the highest levels all the time on fighting off the wall. Yeah, because we do that regularly in combatives.
Yeah. Jaco's wall game is like unbendable, man.
The first time I took Tim down was off the wall.
Yeah, that's get it where you can get it, my friend. Get it where you can get it. Yeah, and so before, just so everybody knows, in a conversation leading up to where we started here, it was the first time that I had ever heard of the Guild of Black Belts. Matt told me there's a Guild of Black Belts because, I should say that in the combatives community, there's a very detailed selection process. In most martial arts, there's a detailed selection, but sometimes it's just based on one person. But in combatives, it's a detailed selection process about who gets to wear a black belt. And how many combative black belts do we have now? Do you know what the number is?
There's a bunch now. The number's up. It's like 40 or 50 now. It's enough where I'm not keeping track of the exact number anymore.
Nice. That makes me happy because that means that more people are involved in it. Like it used to be this exclusive number, but I'd be like, that number needs to grow, in my opinion. I want it to grow. But
what's happened is so I should outline how people get promoted in combatives.
Yeah, please.
But before I do, let me say like the main thing about martial arts belt system is most of them are feudal. You get promoted by one guy. And so what a belt really means is that one person thinks you should wear it. I used to have over my desk at the combative school this picture of this Taekwondo guy giving these black belts to these two 6-year-olds. And I used to always ask everybody, are these black belts real? And everybody would say, no, they're not real. But yes, they are real, because the only thing a black belt means is that somebody thinks you should wear it, and that guy's standards are really low, and they're black belts with it. That's why, for example, in jiu-jitsu, because it's a feudal system like that, right?
Right.
In jiu-jitsu, your black belt carries the name of the person that you got it from. Right? I'm a black belt under Jaco Cavalcante. That's where my jiu-jitsu black belt comes from, and I'm proud of that because he's a hell of a good coach, right? A hell of a good teacher.
I agree.
Okay, but it's always like that, right? So in combatives, it isn't that way. So first off, the way you get promoted is through deeds. Okay, so it's not like memorize this set of techniques.
Katas, yeah.
Right, because at the end of the day, that doesn't make a damn difference, right? Like at the end of the day, it matters if you can fight, if you can shoot, if whatnot. So in combatives, it's a measurement of deeds. So for example, our belts are gray, green, brown, and black, which translate roughly to the same as blue, purple, brown, and black in jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
But with additional skills. So for example, if somebody is a gray belt, well, they have to be able to fight at the blue belt level in order to be able to achieve that. So to do that, they have to have victories against blue belts in competition in order to show. So you're like we know, for example, that Anderson Silva is a great fighter, right? Why do we know? Well, we've all seen him fight on TV, right? Mm-hmm. So if somebody in Minnesota sends me a video of them fighting in a tournament and whipping people at whatever, the Naga or an IBJJF or something like that, and we could tell if it's real or not. We could tell if it's them. We can tell if they actually have the skills. So that's what it means. So if you add that, you can take that approach to a lot of other things too. So take that approach to marksmanship. Marksmanship in their organizations like the USPSA and the IDPA and those sort of organizations, and they have handicapping systems, which are essentially rank systems. Mm-hmm. So if you go shoot at those and then you get to a certain level, well, then you have proven you can shoot at that level compared to all the other people in that sport. So that's the same thing with just exactly like saying I can go fight at the blue belt level. You show up at the world championships of jiu-jitsu and you're not fighting in the absolute open black belt division. You're sort of admitting that you're not the best guy in the room, and you need to be handicapped with a bunch of other people who are similar in skill to you, and that's what your belt, weight, age, blah 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 give you, right? Mm-hmm. Same exact stuff in marksmanship. So we can take that approach to all the skills, medical training, etc. We can verify people have real skills remotely. So it can be done in person by a black belt up to the first 2 belts. You can promote somebody to gray and green, which is essentially blue and purple belt, yourself as a black belt, just because it's a large, ever-growing group of people.
Yeah, you need to
right?
be able to force multiply. Yeah.
Right, but you can also do it remotely. We have a thing. It's called combativeuniversity.org, where you get on there and you sign up, and it's structured like college classes, right? But the assignments are go whip 10 people's ass, send us the video, right?
Yeah.
And then go shoot at this level, send us the video, right?
Yeah.
And
we have one instructor that's doing that right now. So we're on our way to trying to get 3 combative black belts on staff here.
That's right. Yeah. So that across the skill sets you can prove like that. Now, so when you get up to the brown and black belt level, that method is required, because essentially what you're doing is you're building a resume. You need to be able to say, I can fight at the black belt level. So that means you need to go enter tournaments, beat other black belts. Then that's how you're going to prove that you fight at the black belt level. And the same thing, you need to be able to shoot at a really high level, and the same thing as across the board like that. And so you build this resume, and then in the lower ranks, it's like the black belts approve them. You send in your fights, we watch the fight. If it's good enough fight, we'll approve it, right? It's same thing at the higher level, but more than one person looks at it. So like it'd be Jaco or me or 3 or 4 other black belts all looking at it going, yeah, this guy's pretty tough, because the focus is on never letting the standard go down. You know what I mean? Like when we say somebody's a brown belt in combatives or a black belt in combatives, that will always mean they're a badass, because the other black belts aren't going to let somebody in. And you know what I mean? Like there's protective of the guild, if you will. And so there's every reason to reject somebody, like, that fight's not good enough. You didn't really beat that guy,
You got lucky.
or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't really score any points. You just stalled it out. You fell. You know what I mean? Like, so if the black belts look at the fight and think it's bullshit, well, then we're not going to count it. We're like, go beat somebody else. Show us that you can really fight.
Yeah, that's incredible to hear, but it's also very disappointing, because now it's just looking like I'll never be one. But it does make me think, holy shit, Jaco, you really are a badass.
I was.
Yeah. It's
a great example, right? So listen, how many people are there out there in these various skills, right? Shooting, fighting, etc., who make all the claims to being something, but they don't put their shit on the line, right?
Yeah.
They're not entering tournaments. They're not like, when was the last time some of these guys who are out there shooting in, the biggest marksmanship instructors around, when was the last time they entered a USPSA tournament or an IDPA tournament or something like that and tested themselves against other people? I have a buddy, Mike Green, who's a former SF guy, used to work at Range 37. He's a masterclass shooter, right?
Yeah, I know.
The other day I saw a video of him shooting in some local tournament, just smoking it, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's the guy, right? He's my age, right? He's in his 50s, and he's still out there completely crushing it and showing everybody that he really has the skill set, right? And so that's what we're about, right? We like to say deeds of arms, right?
Yeah.
And
I like
what
that.
we're trying to create is that culture where, in a warrior culture, we demand performance from each other, right? So you demand to me, you demand of me, if I'm going to be respected, that I get my ass out there and do it. I can't just say I do it, right? And the reason I mentioned that is when you were talking about Jaco. Okay, so when Jaco had already been the chief trainer at the Army Combative School, and then went up and been the chief trainer at the 10th Special Forces Group, I remember him fighting one of those tournaments up there and just smoking the shit out of people, right? Like, and everybody's like, wow, he's old already, because Jaco was probably 40 at the time, and just like, yeah, well, he's still doing it because we expect it of each other. You can't have a hollow reputation in the combatives world. It's got to be real.
And now I'm disgusted with myself because I skipped noon rolls today. But Jaco went out there. So yeah, man. A, that makes me proud to be associated with it. B, that's just an amazing legacy. And that also makes this next question like more obvious why it was written, because it was written by Jaco. It says,
Yes.
"Who is the greatest combatives black belt, and why is it Jaco?"
Who wrote that?
Let me tell her.
Jaco submitted that.
Hold on. Let me tell everybody how I met Jaco, right? So
Okay.
just so everybody knows. Okay, so I went out to Hawaii. I think his first duty station was the infantry battalions or infantry unit out in Hawaii. So I went out to Hawaii to teach a level 1 and 2 instructor course, right? And of course, nobody knew shit about fighting in those days. But Jaco had been a kickboxer when he was a kid, and at the time he was training with the Inoue brothers, like it's kind of a name from the past in MMA that probably people don't really know of anymore. But at the time, they were like some of the baddest guys on the planet. And so the whole time I was there, he was like the only guy. Like me and him immediately hit it off, right? So it took 4 years or 6 years or something of us communicating with each other and him training out there in the force on his own, because he had to go to the 82nd, do a couple of combat deployments. We were working on it all this time for him to finally be able to come to work at the combative school with me, all from what I learned about him when I met him at that trip in Hawaii. And so, like I said, 4 or 6 years, it was quite a long time, because he had to do 2 combat deployments as a member of the 82nd or something before he could finally get to the combative school. But yeah, that's how I met Jaco, right? He was already whipping that ass.
Yeah, I saw. We watched the video just the other day of him. He choked this guy out in 10 seconds in a combatives tournament, and he had to walk over, and him and his wife had to walk over and tell the ref, "Hey, by the way, that guy's unconscious." And ref's like, "Oh, I mean, I wasn't."
Oh, yeah,
I
didn't see it,
I didn't
yeah.
see it coming. Man. It happened so fast, but yeah. So
I never forget on that first time, the first MTT with me and our training trip that Jaco and I did together. There was a guy who was a pretty tough guy, but kind of stupid, right? And we were doing the achieve the clinch drill. This guy just couldn't figure out that you have to just keep going, right? If you want to pin somebody to the wall, you got to just keep trying. You can't ever quit, right? So every time he'd come in hard and back off, get the shit beat out of him, right? Eventually, he ran out of the room fled.
he played the scene.
So,
Yeah.
That's
so
a survival skill.
So the next hour or something, his entire chain of command came in there, what happened to this guy? We're we heard he fled. We're yeah, fled. He's a coward. And so that gave that guy an Article 15.
Fight or flight.
For
He
being a
chose flight.
pansy, right?
Yeah, they give him an ARC 15 for cowardice.
They gave him disciplinary action for cowardice. Thanks, Jaco.
Yeah.
And that guy is the president of the United States today.
Hey.
Hey, man, that's awesome. So let me talk. So we know for a fact, Jaco, we got at least 2 combative black belts on the staff. We got a couple other, Ronaldo Villa, who is one of our instructors. He's working very hard at it. Excellent black belt, but he's striving to achieve. I don't know where he is in that process, but he's a great American, great individual. But a lot of the, with Colton and with Tim Kennedy.
Steve, too.
What?
Steve's
And Steve,
black.
I'm sorry, yeah, Steve. Oh man, I can't believe I left Steve Martin out. A fantastic mentor. And that's the other thing. Great mentors come out of the program because the way the nature of the program, they not only become great fighters but great mentors along the way, and they're very good at keeping that culture going. But then, I forgot, man, we're up to 3+ on that, which is a really big deal for us.
Several more contractors too, guys who come in for you guys short term. There's a bunch of guys who come in like that who are black belts, I think.
Yeah, so
Can't
they're
think of all the names off the top of my head because I don't know who.
So they're with Tim and with Colton and with Jaco, and those guys competed in combatives tournaments. How important is the Modern Army Combatives tournament? Is it a jewel in the crown, or is it just a thing?
So what I would say is that what competitions do is they help you set a culture. You know what I mean? There are 2 types of competitions. There's formal and informal competitions, right? So a formal competition is a championship, and that gives you a chance who are self-motivated to go prove that you're really the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a important thing because it drives us towards excellence, right? You can't hope to achieve excellence unless you have other people also trying to beat you, and that's why we have championships, right? But there's another type of competition that doesn't get enough credit, but it's actually the main one, and that's informal competitions. Imagine if we all go out and roll, right? What's actually happening is while we're getting better, we're all judging each other, right? And we're all setting a pecking order because we're all figuring out who's good and who's not. And that is what really drives performance, right? So it's just like, the analogy I always use in the Army is, it's like you take a unit out on a run. About a mile into that run, first guy starts falling back, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does everybody think of that guy? Like the whole Army thinks the same thing, right? Even that turd wishes some other turd would be the one who fall
please
out.
fall
right?
behind me. Yeah, I just need one guy to be behind me.
Right. So the Army values running because of that informal competition every single day. And when you get a little farther on and the commander says release and the rabbits all take off, nobody wants to be the turd. Everybody wants to be the rabbits. So we value running, right?
Yep.
So this is the same thing. So when we go to the range, yeah, it's good to shoot and have fun and blah, blah, blah. But before you leave, man, you should put the targets on there, put everybody under the timer, see how everybody does, because we should know between the four of us who smoked it today.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
Right. So then that's going to push us all every single time. It's like, why do you occasionally do your PRs when you're lifting weights? Yeah, because it's competition.
Yeah,
right?
you gotta have a measurement.
Because I'm showing you I can lift this much.
Yeah.
Right. And your opinion of me is in part based upon that. Right.
Sure.
And so that's what we're doing. We're competing like that all the time. So, because that gets us to like what a warrior culture really is. In a warrior culture, there are two components. The first one is we demand of each other. I demand that you shoot as good as you can. I demand that you be as strong as you can, because I might get wounded and you might have to carry me off the battlefield, and I'm big, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I demand that you be as good a fighter as possible. My life depends upon your abilities and all those things. So I'm demanding it. And if you don't do it, I'm not going to respect you, right? Like I will not respect the guy who's not going to do PT, because I need you to be in shape. So that's half. The other half is, and I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
Right. I'm here for you. I'm going to build you up. I'm going to motivate you. I'm going to be like, get out of bed, man. We're going to the weight room. Right. No, it's lunch. Time to roll.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to do that. And we're going to press each other and build each other. And that's how we get that optimum performance. Right. That's like some of the best wrestlers in our country's history have been twins. Well, why does that work out? Yeah, they love each other and they fight each other their whole lives, and they press each other, and so they end up being champions. We have a very good friend, Stefan Banik, whose two brothers were both gold medalists. Right? So, he's the older brother. One of them beat him off the Olympic team, right? So they pressed each other their whole lives, right? Yeah, super badass, isn't that? Yeah, he commanded 3rd Ranger Battalion, and his two brothers were gold medalists in wrestling. Yeah, that's it. That's the idea that we do on the grand scale.
Yeah.
We demand it of each other and we build each other at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's great. I couldn't have said it better myself, but that makes me think too. Now I didn't roll at lunch, so it's Jaco's fault.
Jaco's fault, right?
He didn't say nothing. He just walked off
too.
Yeah, I didn't say that either.
Doug's our medium mogul. He's back
It's
there.
mostly Doug's fault. It's mostly Doug's fault. Yeah.
It's all your fault. It's because I was doing all your payroll and crap in there. But yeah.
W2 season. What are you gonna do?
So if you can you share with us like what's going on at the military academy? How much can you say about that? Like any prospects up there?
Yeah, I can tell you all about it. We have a robust program. So first off, let me say that the United States Military Academy at West Point is the greatest martial arts school in the world, and that's
really
absolutely the truth, right? So we catch them when they first show up. Their basic training is called Beast, right? At Beast, we start showing them how to fight and inculcating them into the warrior ethos, right? Then throughout their experience, they're here for a little over 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
Throughout their experience, they have various times when they have to do it in their tactical training. Like you've probably seen some of the videos where we have them fighting mass on mass and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so they all have to take boxing and gymnastics, believe it or not, whenever they're I think they take boxing their freshman year, their plebe year, that's their freshman year, and then they take gymnastics the next year. They all have to learn how to swim, and then on their junior year here, which is they have to all take the combatives class. But before then, they have a spring and a fall season of company athletics grappling, where they have like intramurals. So we have a league that has about 300 or 400 people in it in the spring, and a different 300 or 400 in it in the fall, where they have 2 tournaments a week for 8 weeks, and then we end up, it ends up being a playoffs and having champions and whatnot as it goes. We have a club where it's a combatives club who they get level 1 and 2 certified. They go out and enter jiu-jitsu tournaments and that kind of stuff. And then their mission is to train the rest of the Corps of Cadets. Every student has to take, like I said, boxing. And then our basic combatives class is PE 360. So that's like 19 lessons. Mm-hmm. And in that course, they have 5 matches, 2 of which are MMA, except they don't hit each other in the face. So everybody has all those things, going on throughout the, we also have a 40-person judo club. It's the national champion collegiate judo club. We have 80 people, because it's 40 males and 40 females, boxing team. That's the best collegiate boxing team in the country.
Yeah, West Point was always kind of renowned for boxing. I remember when I was in the 82nd Airborne, boxing was huge. That was how they did it. Every year was the big boxing smokers and the boxing tournaments there. And if you got in a ring, because I did it a couple times, when you got in the ring across from a West Pointer, you knew you were. Yeah, I mean, they had some skills. They were pretty skilled boxers. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a robust team. We're the national championship team perennially, right? We smash all the other academies and all the other universities in the country. And there's a couple of other contenders, but like Navy doesn't even show up to fight us anymore because we smash those guys, and then we have that we have like a combat weapons team which competes at IDPA and USPSA type events, steel challenge, that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
we have all that crap going on, and it's all kind of like it permeates the Corps of Cadets that we have all those things happening. Now the Corps, they can specialize away from stuff, and we have a robotics team too,
Yep.
But there are certain things that everybody must do. They'll all have 5 boxing matches by the time they get out of their freshman year. They'll all have 5 combatives matches. They'll almost all have been in a league for at least 2 or 3 seasons where they had to compete at grappling. We're building towards the day when anybody coming out of West Point, you'll be able to look at them and know, yeah, that guy knows how to fight. Right?
That's great.
Right now, the chances are, because we've put some studs out into the force who are just monsters, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not everybody yet. But it's coming where it will be. It'll be the vast majority.
That's exciting. And then on to ROTC, right? After that, we got to go get the ROTC guys going too.
Yeah, ROTC has challenges, right? Because they're trying to keep people from leaving. They don't even. A lot of places don't even let them do combatives, But West Point's a whole different tamale. Like we're, you guys who are, you probably worked those summer camps for ROTC. Yeah. Everybody knows it's not really like training, but the West Point cadets training is like training.
Yeah, that's great to hear. We went up there one time. I took my son up there. Gorgeous institution on the most beautiful stretch of the Hudson, and up in New York, man. If you ever get a chance to go, you got to go see it. It's like Hogwarts for badasses. It's beautiful, right? And it's historic. Yeah, and it's great. It's great. I loved it because I went and visited the graveyard there, and there's so many names buried there of people that you only read about in history books. And you're like, I can't believe I'm standing in front of, this guy's grave, like Burnside's grave, but so really cool place to go, man. And I hope to get to go back there one day, but that's awesome, man. It may really,
I think you clearly came in the summer when it's beautiful here.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. I took my son there for a lacrosse camp. He was going to apply, and then they made him stay in some crappy barracks on a cot. And then the next thing I did is I took him to UNC. And once he saw UNC, that he was like, yeah, all his memories of West Point were sleeping on a cot. And then he got to UNC. It was nothing but girls and the quad and everything. I was like, yeah, UNC ruined him, dude. That's it. Actually, I think he's gonna go in the Air Force now. But. Yeah, man, it's awesome. What else do you guys want to add? Any questions? Anything?
So I have a question, Matt. When you started, when I came into the combatives program around 04, 05, like what was the mission as far as like to get the program basically written down? Because we haven't really been in the manual just yet. And it was still a really small operation. Like, well, what was your mission then to like find people, first of all, and then second of all, grow the force?
Yeah, so I would say, so kind of an answer. The people always ask me if I ever imagined it would be as big as it is, right? And I always say yes. I knew whenever I first started training, which was like in '94, that it would be this big a deal, that it would spread throughout the Army and then eventually outgrow the Army and spread out of the nation. I knew it all the time because when something's real, it's real, you know. And then my mission in the early days, so the first manual I wrote in 2001, maybe got published in 2002. Still wasn't that good, but it was the first book I ever read, you know. So it's like it took a while to get it going. But what I would say is, I was trying to build a cadre full of people that were fanatics, right? That would definitely keep doing this forever and would keep proselytizing and would keep spreading it throughout the Army. And if you look at the people we had at that time, man, it was really that way, right? Because I was able to like hand select people and say, yeah, this guy right here. Look at who we had. It was Troy and Jeremy Brown and Keith Bach and yourself, and like Aaron Cooper, and like everybody that we had in those days, is still training, is a badass. He became a black belt, you know, like I think we did a really good job of like selecting the group of people who were going to like keep at it over the long run. You know what I mean? So this program, like I said, started in 94, 95 in 2nd Ranger Battalion. Man, that's 30 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
Here's 30 years ago. And
That's painful because that's when I came in. I came in 95.
yeah, that's right. I was
He was already in by then.
Yeah, I know. He was already in.
Yeah.
Everything about this podcast has just made me depressed.
Yeah. All right. So Jeff, this will make you feel young, man. I came in 84,
Nice.
Reagan's first term.
Yeah, I remember 84. Yeah, nice.
I was 5.
That's a plank owner. Yeah,
I was
that's a
negative.
plank owner.
I was negative years back then.
Zach's the baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I would say. Like the key thing in those days was I was trying to find the people who were believers, who would keep doing it. You know what I mean? And we also recruited mostly from the Rangers in that time because that's who was mostly doing it. You know, so all the other guys, so all those names I just mentioned of the early guys, the only one of those guys who wasn't in a Ranger regiment at that time was Jaco, right? Everybody else came from like 2nd Ranger Battalion, 1st Ranger Battalion, and whatnot. So because we had all been training for 5 or 6 years, so we had like a leg up on the rest of the Army. You know, that's why I was saying, like when I met Jaco, like I was like, hey, this is the right guy. You know, and then that's
when
why
I met Jaco, I thought the same thing. This isn't right.
Yeah, we were definitely fanatical, especially Keith Bach, man. That dude was crazy, dude. Keith was the guy that was like, oh, you going to go to lunch, pussy? You couldn't go to lunch around Keith, bro.
That's right. Broken leg, that's a lot of trouble to go through to avoid training.
That's exactly who he was. He's a sergeant major now, but
yeah.
right.
That's good, man. That's good because like from my very first exposure to it, again, I said like I came to fighting sports late. I boxed just because I was in the 82nd, and boxing is what you did if you wanted to get out of work. And then you know, getting into combatives and then jiu-jitsu later and learning to love it is I thought the exact same thing that you did. I was like, this has got to be I knew it was great when I got exposed to it. And then many times I told myself, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just, you know, maybe I just, I'm looking at it through lustful eyes and stuff. But then we teach here at Sheepdog Response. And at the end of the day, people that came in that were just soccer moms or run-of-the-mill guys, linemen or firefighters or, you know, IT guys that showed up day one as average Joes, at the end, you can see the belief in their eyes too. And I'm like, nope, yeah, I was right. Yeah, Matt's right. Like it is greater than the sum of its parts, and it's a big thing. And like, again, I can't wait till the day I can type it into Word and it doesn't come back with a little red line underneath it, because I want everybody to know about it, you know?
Let me say something about that, Matt.
Yeah.
I think you're hit on a super important point, right? So I was focused in those early days, and still am. That's why I still work at West Point, and changing the culture within the Army, right?
Yeah.
So that we would end up having the warrior culture that we always claim to have and that we actually need, right? So that was my focus. But I would say that as this has gone along, and as we've all got to be older guys, and all this original crew of combatives guys are mostly getting out and retiring and all that kind of stuff, you know, the mission has expanded. And this is where, like what you guys are doing at Sheepdog is exactly in keeping with the idea behind combatives, right? So imagine this, right? When a lion attacks a herd of buffalo, right? What happens? Yeah, the bulls and the tougher cows of the herd, fight them off, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's our role. You know, what I always try to tell people, especially retired guys, because like imagine what happens in the Army. You've been training your whole life, you're a soldier, this is your identity. When you retire that day, most guys have like this big identity crisis, like what am I? You know, who am I? I'm not a soldier anymore. I went to Iraq like 3 days after I retired because I was trying to answer that question. You know, who am I? Well, I'm a soldier, right? So I went straight away. So really what we are is we are the bulls of the herd. We're the ones that protect everybody else, right? We're the ones that make sure that everybody around us is safer all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you guys are just the greatest example because you're taking those other people who self-identify as the bulls of the herd and saying, look, are the people around you safer because you're there? Is everybody else better off? You know, do you have the skill set and the mindset to make sure that you're the one that the situation demands, right? And that's the true, even if all you did was like learn how to put on a tourniquet, right? And there's a mass shooting event, you're a better guy to have, everyone's safer because you have that skill.
Agreed.
Right there. Shooting, fighting, all that. It can give everybody a sense of mission, a sense of purpose for your training. Because, yeah, it's fun. You know, like I think the most important lesson of combatives is it's a fun thing to do, right? But it's not just fun. It's fun with a purpose. And that purpose is keeping everybody around. I love you guys. What is the goal, the terminal learning objective of your first course, your Protector 1 course, or whatever's the first course? Well, there's goals are, it's fun, so you're going to keep doing it.
Agreed. Yep.
You understand training, and you understand how you get to be what you want to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, that's the point. That's what we can do in a short-term course, right?
Yep.
We can show you, here's how the training works, and here's where your role is as somebody who's a bull of the herd, right? You know what I mean? So,
yep.
So I think that's our next phase, right? As the Black Belt Guild expands, as it presses out into the civilian world, as guys like yourselves are out there teaching people, we are spreading that so that it's the counter to all this cultural bullshit that is happening around us, right? We're still a group of people who are about deeds of arms and about honor and about family and about all that stuff, right? We're still those people trying to make it about that. And that's really, at the end of the day, you know, combatives always tell everybody in the Army, look, we're not going to win the next war because we're better at hand-to-hand combat. That isn't the point. We're going to win the next war because of all the shit that being better at hand-to-hand combat makes you become.
Yeah. Again, like it's great on some of the parts. Man, I couldn't have said it any better, and I don't know if we could. I don't know if we can attempt to end on a higher note than that. Doug, how are you doing? We're looking good on time.
Everything's looking great.
Yeah. How about this, man? Because I don't know if it can get much better than that, or we can get a much more resounding compliment from you. But I absolutely agree with everything you said. If you haven't, if you're out there, you're watching this video and you have not seen Matt Larsen's video where he's talking about warrior culture to the cadets, we're going to link that in this video so that you can go see it. If not, go hunt it down and see it, because I believe, just like when Jaco first saw it and he said, hey, you guys got to get in here and see this right away. As soon as he saw it, it reinvigorated me, and it made me realize just how profound you are as an individual, how profound what you created, or your conceptual idea became, and how much of my life got changed because of it, how much Jaco's life got changed, and then everybody around us got changed, and how much of our business is built on it. But just like you said, like really honestly and altruistically wanting people to be able to become protectors and become like to use your analogy, become the senior bulls and cows, the ones who are committed to protecting the herd, man. That's what makes me keep from going crazy doing all this. It also makes me sleep good at night, because if we can just create one or two out there and they perpetuate it, and then long after we're gone, then it keeps going, then that'll be worth all the trouble for sure. Man, it's been awesome having you on here, Matt. It's awesome seeing you again. I haven't seen you in a long time. I want to see more of you. We're going to try and get you down to Texas. I can't wait to get you down here. Hopefully we get a bunch of people, they'll watch this video, and then they'll be lined up. It'll be gangbusters to come see you, and we can come get you down here. thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for and thanks for making great cadets up there at West Point, because it's something I truly believe in. Like I said, as a retiree, I'm more concerned than ever with the state of the military. So I want them to be strong, but I want them to leave there, and I want them to perpetuate. Because it does take young officers and young leaders to keep the culture going. Because I've met young officers and leaders that were opposed to it, and then I could never understand it. And then when you meet one that isn't, the culture in that unit is totally different and much more. It's much more receptive, and it's much more nurturing, and there's better mentoring. Everything comes from that. Like I said, greater than the sum of its part. Anything you guys want to add before we wrap it up?
No, man. Obviously, you're a huge role model of mine, a huge mentor, and I appreciate everything you've done for me and for the military. Like it's great. It definitely changed my life. It definitely changed my career path. Right in the middle of my career path, I was like, you know what? He's right. This is where we need to be. So I appreciate it.
Zach, anything to add before we break?
Yeah, Matt, thanks for coming out and doing this with us. Hopefully we get you down here to Texas soon. And I'd like to meet you in person.
All right, thank you. It won't take much to get me to come to the center of the universe.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. That's it. And so if you like the video, of course, like, subscribe, come look at more of our content at Sheepdog Response. Look at the other podcast of ours, which is about violence, where Tim's on there. Tim says hello. Like I said, he wanted to be here today, but he's been pulled away. But I'm certain we're going to get together as a group soon. So check out About Violence. Make sure you like and subscribe. Write comments. I want to read your comments, so make sure you put in comments there, like whether it's like, what's this guy talking about, all the way up to, yeah, I love it, can't get enough. But especially go check out his video. You are not going to regret it. Thanks again, Matt, and thanks, guys, and we'll see you later.